Daniel, we are back.
Hello. Yes, we are back. I am back. My gosh, it's been what, two, three episodes?
It's been a couple episodes,
I've
but
been
you're back.
away. Yeah.
Been busy. Man's
We're
busy.
back. We're back to this rotation of there's never actually the three of us every time.
That's a good point. And I maybe this time, actually, funny enough, I think this time I'm the constant one.
Hmm.
Usually, it's not me who's the constant one, because of work. But come August, that will
We'll
that will
see.
happen again.
You know what's gonna
Um,
happen? We're gonna be like a different, you're gonna be at U of T or something. I'll be at,
yeah.
I don't know, the Pan Am Sports Center.
Okay.
Adam will be touring Montreal, but we all have different backgrounds again, like your Guelph one.
Yes. Yes. That was a summer. Adam's on the IR as he said as he texted us a few days
Hmm.
ago. He's on the IR. He'll be hopefully back by the next episode. We'll see.
Not long,
Uh,
long enough for cap relief. So
not long enough
not
for
yet.
cap relief. There's the joke. That's there we needed it. But let's start with the biggest news
Hmm.
of the episode, I'd say, is we have a Stanley Cup champion.
We do.
In in their sixth year of existence, the Vegas Golden Knights are Stanley Cup champions.
They did it. The
And
long wait for the
the long
fans.
wait.
They've been wanting this forever, but they
Bill
got it
Foley
done.
said it. Bill Foley said it. He said when he purchased the team, even though he didn't purchase the team, he purchased the expansion fee or whatever. He said they were going to win the cup within 6 years, and they just did it. They beat the they did, that's true. They beat the Florida Panthers in 5 games, and in Game 5 they beat them 9-3.
Yeah.
That was a tough one.
That is, I've just been thinking about this is the big thing. I know we're gonna get more to details, but on
Yeah,
Florida side of things, after the second period, what can Paul Maurice tell the team in between the periods? Like it's 6-1.
yeah, no, that's a tough one. I don't know what you could say other than to me. And listen, I'm not a coach, so that's why I'm giving this answer. Um, it was a good year. They whether I mean, listen, I think the Panthers, the players themselves have said, everyone really didn't expect us to make it this far, and myself included, did not expect them to make it this far. So I would argue it's been a hell of a run, and we can look at uh, specific players who helped them get there along the way, including one Sergei Bobrovsky, Matthew Tkachuk coming up clutch especially in the third round against the Carolina Hurricanes. But again, like, no one expected them to get this far. No one expected them to get out of the first round when they were down
Mm,
3-1 to the President's Trophy, one of the greatest teams, one of the greatest regular season
regular
teams
season teams, yes.
of all time, Boston Bruins.
We have to
So
remember who ended that series for them.
who was it?
Friend of the show. Well, not really a friend of the show, but deep in our hearts, Leafs legend Carter Verhaeghe.
Damn it, Daniel. Damn it. Damn it. We've been recording for 5 minutes and his
Oh
name has
my
been brought up.
gosh, I
That's
love the
okay.
guy.
It's a name of the past for Leaf fans,
Hmm.
as I would put it. Um, what did you think? I mean, like, listen, we can break down by game, but I just curious to know what you thought of the series as a whole, because a lot of people went into the series saying, I think a lot of people went into it dissing the two teams that made it. And I mean, some of the numbers some of the TV numbers that have come out since Game 5 have shown that the viewership wasn't as high. But do you think it was as quote unquote boring as people said it was, or you think it was exciting?
I think okay. There's two things here. I think for me, it was that we don't always see this all the time, but the NBA finals going hand in hand with the NHL finals, right? Like usually there's a bit of a gap in between the games, but For me, watching both series, I think it was the difference in narrative. For the NBA, I think there was two things you can really cheer for. I guess number one, Miami being a big market, you're of course going to get more of the viewers for that one, especially someone who is as I guess infamous or famous as you want to see it, like Jimmy Butler,
Hmm.
someone who can perform like that, has that personality. And then on Denver side of it, it's just kind of like, are they finally going to get it done? First championship. Nikola Jokic, arguably the faces of the league right now. Of course, you're going to watch that. You could also add in the Canadian factor of Jamal Murray coming back and being an all star for them. I think that just is the difference for me. I think with this one, I guess from a hockey fan perspective, it's the Vegas thing where it's just, yeah, of course they got it done because look how aggressive they were with every single move they did. I think it was Elliot, no, not Elliot Friedman. I think it was not Elliot Friedman. It was Kevin Bieksa where he talked about how there was that transition between the misfits that made it to the finals, quote
Hmm.
unquote, and having this team of what they said, they're gonna try to win it in 6 years. They were so aggressive with the trades they did. We can question their player loyalty up until this point when it came to the big contracts, but I think that just was it. It's just kind of like, oh, like look, these teams kind of like went into it. So for me, it was just that aspect of like, what are you really kind of cheering for if you're not a fan of either team?
Yeah, I guess from a narrative standpoint, sure, maybe there wasn't a whole lot to watch for, but I think from, and maybe I don't know if I'm alone on this one or if you would agree or if other people would agree, but from a team, like from looking at the two teams and the way they play, I thought this was a really, really interesting standpoint because of not necessarily like I just look at the way they play, and maybe their systems aren't exactly the same, but they will grind you. They are, I think, and when Adam and I were talking about last episode, it was they are a pain in the ass to play against, and both of them are like that, and they're very similar in that sense. And to me, it was the question of who was going to be a bigger pain in the ass, or and listen, we now know about all the injuries. Who was the healthier team who was going to be the bigger pain in the ass? And I thought it would be Vegas. I think I said that last episode or two episodes ago. It turned out to be Vegas, but that doesn't take away from I think what Florida did through the playoffs. It was just constant like boom, and you could like time after time and time and time again running through the having to run get through those guys and then not even be able to get past Bobrovsky. But Vegas, man, were to me a completely different beast. While maybe their goaltending and listen, from a name perspective, Aiden Hill doesn't have the Sergei Bobrovsky Vezina pedigree, if that's what we want to call it. This was an absolute Cinderella story in terms of Aiden Hill. But everywhere else, it was boom, boom, line after line after line down to their fourth line. I think the depth that Vegas had is what put them over at the end of the day, put them over the Panthers in this series.
It's very interesting things. I remember on this pod, we used to always talk about all of those trades Vegas was doing to get players to dump cap and how we thought how heavy they were, like how top six heavy they were, how they had two or three defensemen they heavily relied on. And to really see that difference, I know that they did make moves again, but I really liked how more strategic they were this time. Ivan Barbashev is example like that. You talk about that two-way game, talk about a guy you could really put anywhere else in the lineup, and I think he's just an example of just smarter moves on Vegas's part. They were that juggernaut team that we expected them to be, but it was this time the complementary guys coming up. We didn't mention Jack Eichel yet, the resurgence have Jack Eichel.
Right.
Biggest weakness we talked about with Vegas is the center depth, and Jack Eichel really solidified that for them. Um, Giving Chandler Stevenson, an opportunity to just play at his own pace. He's a good player, not a top line center, but
Mm-hmm.
it just kind of worked for them. One thing you did mention with Aiden Hill is it's funny because he was supposed to be this goalie in San Jose. Do you remember that when he left?
Briefly,
Not he
briefly.
left Arizona, where the Sharks were like, hey, we're gonna try to roll with him, and then it just didn't work. And then they sold low on him for what, a fourth round pick to
Yeah.
Vegas
Yeah.
after trading like a second and a low tier prospect for him. And I kind of like that. We talk about depth. We talk about the goaltending they had there. Just they did everything they could. They had the insurance policies wherever they had to go. And I remember it was also in the first round. We were questionable, like, okay, did Mark Stone come back way too early for this? But he proved that he still played at an insanely high level. He proved that he can be the leader they needed. And for me, it was just a more cohesive Vegas team. I know there were still a lot of moving parts there, but it was a team that just came together at the right moment, that things just stuck. It wasn't just we're trying to get best player available possible and then put them somewhere on the team. It
Right.
felt more cohesive.
And well, it was a completely different approach. Like you said, like I think if you look at the moves that they made in years past, in terms of they really did go after best player available, getting Alex Petrangelo and moving out Nate Schmidt and more. Then going after Mark Stone and moving prospects, and then doing it again last season with Jack Eichel. They didn't take that approach this time around. They they took, okay, like let's create, like that bottom six is just a pain.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and Ivan Barbashev, and I know Jeff Merrick, or I'm sure more than just Jeff Merrick, but I hear him say it the most, talk about that being the best trade deadline acquisition. And he's probably right in terms of the impact he's had on that team. And I heard him say like he loves it in Vegas, but man, if he goes to the open market, that guy is gonna make a lot of money. And it happens every year, right? Like we've
Yeah.
seen it in the past, Barclay Goodrow, Blake Coleman, Kadri. It's really, really big examples. I don't know if he's going to get the high end of Nazem Kadri dollars, but he's gonna make his money because of the impact he made on the team. I want to go to Florida for a second. I go back to Florida again because obviously they had a really tough start to the season where they just had a load of injuries. And so they didn't have the greatest start to the season. We were talking about whether Montreal would have a top 10 pick with the pick that they own from Florida. And then they kind of made their way back up as people started coming back from
Yeah.
their injuries. Where do you think they go next year? Like listen, Matthew Tkachuk's here for forever, and that's a
Yeah.
good thing. They have, for the most part, an idea of their team that they really like. I'm just looking at their cap friendly right now. They have up front, they have three guys who are either UFAs or RFAs, which is Eric Stahl, Giovanni Smith, and Colin White. Up front, they're set. Like it's
Mm-hmm.
on the defensive end, and like, listen, those guys had pretty good years. Do they bring back a guy like Radko Gudas? And what's next for the Florida Panthers?
Yeah, it's interesting because for me they had the weirdest 2 years. you
Right.
know, like they went from top of the division to barely making the playoffs, except it all mattered in the what happened in the postseason for them. So to be honest, I don't know. I actually don't know. Like I think that they had an excellent core for the postseason, but I want to see more of that consistency in the regular season for that to happen. I think they're a team that they're probably going to lose a few of these spare parts, but they're
Mm-hmm.
going to be able to replace them easily. I don't know, like it's weird. Like we talk about like Eric Stahl of like where do you go from here from this guy's what 38 years old now?
Mm-hmm.
Uh, do you still bring back that cheap depth, that that embedded leadership that it's always invaluable to any team that wants to go on a run, or do you want to get younger? Does Colin White really kind of be viewed as that guy who was that reclamation project that came from Ottawa after he was bought out? Like, how much more do you want to bet on that? For me, I think it was just Radko Gudas might be the only guy in terms of just someone who's just been there since the turnaround for them, someone who's been very consistent of being that type of guy and being that player. I know he's getting a bit older for the way he's playing, especially. You bring it up. One thing I do know is, and we've talked about this before with Florida, is just betting on these guys that become amazing offensively. We talked
Right.
about Carter Higgy already, talked about betting on Anthony Duclair, other guys who've left like Alex Venberg, just giving these guys opportunities and then figuring out what we could do with them. We could even say Ryan Lomberg as an example,
Mm-hmm.
Mason Marchment as an example as well. So I think Billy Zito has an idea of what he wants to do with this team. And I don't think they have to break the bank necessarily again, like a big, I don't think there's going to be another Matthew Kachuk type of move coming, but I think
They
it's
don't
going to
have
be
the
more.
capital for
Yeah,
that.
they don't have the
Yeah.
capital for that. Um, but I could see it the way it was 3 seasons ago of just getting these guys and giving them this type of low risk, high reward type of signing.
Now, I saw this floated on Twitter, and it was more so just a question, not a rumor or anything like that. Um, their goaltending situation. I guess we don't exactly know the situation with Spencer Knight at the moment, but we do know that Sergei Bobrovsky makes $10 million for 3 more seasons after this one. You're pro. I don't know what you're betting on with Alex Lyon. I guess he had a really good end of the season, and then eventually you had to pull him come the playoffs. He's 30 years old. He's a UFA. The question that was posed was, do the Florida Panthers trade Sergei Bobrovsky, and does he bring back, is he of positive value now after this run?
Oh, that's a good one. There's so many things on like different sides of that, right? Because like it's the
Right.
money, the age,
Yeah.
but it's also just like proven winner, proven guy that could. I always call him the giant killer. Like it just for me, it
Well,
just
not
that's what it
wrong.
is. Yeah, he's the giant killer in the playoffs, and it's weird. It's, like, it's for a team that is going to be contending, but it's like, are the Panthers willing to take back Cap for the next 3 seasons for that to happen?
Right.
Because where does that kind of leave them? Because we don't know what's going on with Spencer Knight. I don't trust. I don't think Alex Lyon's coming back. I forgot. Alex Baumgartner talked to us about that. The other prospect goaltender they just signed, and then he played a few games.
Uh,
Um, he's a European goalie. I
I
don't think
don't
that guy's
know.
quite ready to play for a bit, but yeah, I'll
I
look for
don't
the
know.
name. But he's a guy that I don't know what the long term approach is with that one. We're looking right now, like what the goaltending market is right now. Do you go and try to bet on it? Like I believe like Mackenzie Blackwood might not get a qualifying offer.
Right.
Is that a guy that another Billy Zito type of? Do you bet on this guy or
Mm-hmm.
Tristan Jarry is probably not coming back to Pittsburgh? Is it another guy where it's like, okay, you had an up and down career so far. Let's try to get back on that up, at least for now.
Right.
So there are options they have with it, but I'm not worried about Florida. Like they've been able to get a lot out of their guys. I think Will Christophilus talked about this. Like they were built on a team of guys that played beyond their contract value,
Mm-hmm. And they have to
and
find that again.
yeah, they have to find that again.
No, that's a good point. Like, I don't think they're gonna have trouble next year either. I think they shore up, and I think shore up their back end a little bit and you look at what they were missing compared to Vegas. And again, I'd still make the argument was depth. And if they can find those pieces, again, the Atlantic is already a nightmare, even with
Yeah.
them in it. If they shore themselves up, it continues to be a nightmare. So again, they're in a very, very tough division. Adding Matthew Tkachuk as a solid piece of that core last season absolutely helped. Um, and we'll see what next year brings. Do you have anything else on either team or the cup final or the playoffs in general before we
Um,
move on?
yeah, two final points. I don't
Yep.
know. I think it's I really like the core in Vegas.
Yep.
They're gonna be able to run it back, more so as the team is. I
Under the
don't,
cap, obviously.
yeah, under the cap, obviously. So maybe they'll like. I mean, like we say that's love. Like, there's no excuse for this team to kind of run it back and try to go for a back-to-back championship. We'll
Yeah,
see how that
they should.
goes. Um, Second point is, and you did mention it, it made me think about it with Florida, is the amount of injuries they have and trying to get these guys back into gel into the lineup, especially the right side on defense.
Right.
That might kind of plague them a bit of playing catch up again towards the end of the season. So we'll see how that unfolds.
Yeah, I don't know. I haven't seen it, so I don't know if it's been announced, like the timelines. I've seen the injuries and like just a ridiculous amount of injuries, and I think highlighted by Matthew Tkachuk and his broken sternum in game
Yeah.
four. They were wild.
Aaron
I don't
Ekblad
know.
surgery.
Yeah, I don't. And that maybe
Yeah.
you've seen it. I haven't seen the timeline. I haven't read anywhere about if anyone's missing the start of the season.
I know for sure Aaron Ekblad is missing training camp, and then
Mhm.
Brandon Montour's 3 to 4 months with his surgery.
So maybe I can't do so July. Yeah, maybe the very beginning of the season he'll miss. So I don't know. I think they'll be fine.
Be fine.
I think they'll be fine. That's just me. Is that your second point? I'm
Yeah, that was my
unless I
second
missed that.
point. Yeah.
Okay. Where do you want to go to next? We have a whole list of options. We can talk about the Sens. We can talk about coaching hires. We can talk about the Leafs. We can talk about who the Habs should take at 5. Where do
We
you
could
want to start?
we could do Ottawa because that's another
You want to do
big.
Ottawa?
There's another
Okay.
like we're gonna spend as much time, but it's another big story.
Yeah. Well, I mean, we've been kind of waiting a few weeks for it now, but the Ottawa Senators have sold to Michael Andlauer for $950 million. If that name sounds familiar, that is because Michael Andlauer is is a minority shareholder of the Montreal Canadiens. I believe it's 10%. And now he obviously has to sell that as he becomes the owner of the Ottawa Senators. It took some time. We lost Steve Apostolopoulos. We lost the Remington Group and Ryan Reynolds, but now they've set on Michael Andlauer.
Yeah,
We're
like keep it
here.
Canadian. Yeah, keep it here. You already mentioned too that this is a guy that kind of dedicated too of like just what do I call it? Like metropolizing the Ottawa Senators, making them more central, being in Ottawa, not in Canada. So
Yeah.
I
Well,
think it's already positive step
I
forward.
think that
Yeah.
was a big part for all the bids. But it is classic that it's a guy from within the NHL, which listen, I don't I'm complaining about it, sure. This and I'm trying to be consistent with how I talk about the Arizona Coyotes here. Not that I'm comparing the franchises, but the idea. My whole thing is will Michael Andlauer help the Ottawa Senators move forward in many different aspects in helping them build a competitive team through their payroll, through moving the team downtown, relatively downtown, closer than where much closer to where from where they are now to help uh to help grow revenue. Like, is that if I'm looking at it from that sense, is that what he's going to do? Is he actually interested in helping the team rather than just owning the team? And I think those are two different to me, those are two different things. It's the same thing I said about Arizona, where time and time again, that team has been put in a situation where they haven't had the best owners. And it's turned out to be the what is currently happening over there. So if Michael Andlauer, which I don't know much about him, as if he's going to help push this team forward, which in turn really actually helps the league push forward too. I don't see why this would be a bad thing.
Yeah. I think for him, it's such a precarious situation right now. The
Mm-hmm.
franchise finds itself in. When we mentioned like Arizona, we've mentioned how during their transition out of management, that was a team where they were supposedly in transition towards becoming more successful. You know, Taylor Hall,
Right.
Phil Kessel, all of that, and then we suddenly see them go back to their old habits of persistent, constant, scorch earth policy rebuilds that we're seeing there, or just doing something with all these contracts like that just go somewhere. I think Ottawa too is just not in the same situation as Arizona now, but more of there's that glimmer of hope you have with them.
Mm-hmm.
Remember last season, Pierre Dorian said the rebuild is over. So you look at this team as, is this the team that we're probably going to elevate? That no, we're not going to keep stepping back and trying to trade all of these guys again and just hoping for the highest draft pick,
Mm-hmm.
hoping that we just get experience from the young guys right now. I think as much as he is a young guy, Jacob Chikrin should be that signal, that final signal of we're trying to build something here successfully long term. The biggest thing we've mentioned before is just from the draft before. What is the value and what you're going to bring in for Alex DeBrincat now? Do you
Right.
still view him as a guy that is someone that could be central to your offense, a guy that actually wants to stay in Ottawa, a guy that for what Ottawa's trying to do now, like is he a marketable guy right now that you need to invest in that? So I think for me, that's just the biggest thing that's going to be part of what's going to happen for the Senators now. I'll call it the glimmer of hope of that it's a bit of an upswing right now. There's excitement over a new owner, excitement over a guy who's Canadian who wants to make the team more central. And it just has to kind of just make sense on the ice right now of what Ottawa wants to do. Like, are you going to go back to the old habits, or are you going to actually be sustainable, like a sustainable winner for the long term? So,
But I think this is where the two situations differ. And we're going to get to Alex DeBrincat because
mm,
there's an Alex DeBrincat update. First, I should clarify that Andlauer is buying 90% of the team for $950 million. Eugene Melnick's daughters are going to still own 10% of the team. Where I think the situations are different are if you look at Ottawa, what you'll see in Ottawa is Pierre Dorian had a very tough time at times making the right decision, not by his own doing. Now, I think it's come out recently that he actually wanted to offer Mark Stone an 8-year contract and was told no. Oh, did I lose Daniel? Oh, I might have lost him.
well, am I
Oh,
here?
we're back. Yeah, you're
Okay,
back. That's
yes.
okay.
like
I'll go back. I don't know what you heard, but
I heard the Mark Stone. I heard everything.
you heard Mark Stone 8 year.
Yeah,
Eight, he wanted to offer him an 8-year deal and was shot down.
that's okay. They have Eric Brandstrom now.
Right. So so to me, like I think he wanted to make the right decisions, but he wasn't able to because of outside factors. So yeah, you know what? There are moves that Pierre Dorian have made that really have not worked out. And I mean, I'm not going to list them off because there's no point. But there are moves that he have made that have not worked out. But there's plenty of moves that he has made that have worked out for the team. So I necessarily think again it, the conversation is above uh Pierre Dorian and the decisions going back to the old decisions. It's about, is the owner in essence willing to spend the money? I think
Yeah.
that's what to me, and if you disagree, let me know. Is what's at stake here? Is he willing to? Is Andlauer willing to spend the money?
Yeah, because for me, it's you you really did kind of like center a lot of things on these young guys that they came up when everybody else was being traded.
Right.
Like in terms of the investment, are you going to spend and allow these guys to get the support, allow these guys to know that they're valued players, or are you going to have Brady Kachuk become a Mark Stone situation? I think for me,
Mm-hmm.
that's the biggest
Oh,
comparison I
yeah.
have with that is these guys that have willingly stayed on this team beyond their rookie contracts, these guys that you want to prompt up as your franchise guys, are you gonna invest in them as well, or is it just gonna be another thing where it's like, okay, recycle and repeat? I think that's just gonna be the biggest change for it. But like what you said, like I don't know his management style. I don't know how he's gonna be as an owner. We only saw him with 10% of the Montreal Canadiens. I don't think like
Right.
he has anything to overrule with that. It's just going to be interesting to see like what he's going to do when it comes to like the big decisions. Like does Alex DeBrincat, does that situation signal what we're going to see with the new owner, or is it something that it's just going to be something different that we'll see for Ottawa?
Yeah. No, that's a good point. Like that's what it comes down to, and hopefully it's something new. Let's talk about Alex DeBrincat because um prior to the sale of the team, and I guess we don't really know if that has changed, but it seems that Alex DeBrincat may be on his way out of Ottawa. And it's and I know this morning the team or it was announced that they were going to go to arbitration with Alex DeBrincat, which is always lovely and is definitely a good sign um for for his chance with staying with Ottawa. Now they traded a lot last year for Alex Brinkat. They traded the 7th overall pick, the 39th overall pick, and a third round pick, I believe, next year. It's going to be hard to recoup the assets that they gave up from last year because that he didn't have as good a year with the Ottawa Senators this year, unfortunately. What and I'm stuck on this too. Like, what do you do with Alex DeBrincat? Do you go out and essentially take the loss on Alex DeBrincat in the trade? Like, you're not going to get back what you paid. Do you keep him for another year? Because then you're walking him to free agency. I'm pretty sure if you keep him for another year, and maybe you trade him at the trade deadline, or do you somehow like? And I don't think this is an option, but do you somehow convince him to stay the 8 years? Because but again, that seems like an absolute far fetched idea. It doesn't sound like he wants to stay in Canada for the next 8 years. Is I believe how it was put.
Yeah. I think for me it's the draft. I sound like Elliot Freeman here. The draft is going to determine what we're going to see in terms of the decisions.
Right.
I think at that point it's not so far dragged into the summer yet that we're going to expect that okay they have to get what they can, or even at the deadline, get what you can for this guy that clearly doesn't want to be here. I think with the draft that's the perfect opportunity to not necessarily get the similar package that they had, but get something. You know what I mean? I don't think they're gonna get a Kevin Korchinski type of prospect back for Alex DeBrincat, but I could see it, and I don't know why. I see it similar to what the Wild did with Kevin Fiala. Rather than just let it drag out, they allowed themselves to get a lower first round pick, get a solid NCAA prospect, and just work with that. Know that they got a solid package, maybe not necessarily the equal full value back, but they got something back.
Yeah, so the Wild got Brock Faber and 19th overall from the Kings last year.
Mm-hmm.
Now, my question is though, and I've heard this talks about it, and I think I would agree with this, is that in the situation that the Ottawa Senators are in, is it beneficial for them, sorry, is it beneficial for them to acquire futures? You're going into a year where last year, um, Pierre Dorian said the rebuild's done.
Mm-hmm.
I can't imagine a scenario where, again, you trade Alex DeBrincat for futures and your team gets better, unless you can go somehow around and flip those assets for another player. Isn't it better for the team to go out there and
Yeah.
trade for some type of asset, like a player that's going to make an impact on the lineup now?
Yeah, I'm thinking about that. Yeah, it's a good thing. I'm trying to search now. Like, this is also like a very NHL thing. That you know, you trade RFAs, for example, or you trade guys that have the high potential, but it's just not fitting in their current situation. So all I could think of is Pierre-Luc Dubois, but like I'm trying to think right now,
Nah.
like who are the other guys you can go for? Because yeah, Pierre-Luc Dubois is number one according to Sportsnet. Yes, for Brad, we'll talk
Well,
about
he
that
just he
after.
just
Yeah,
signed. Yeah,
Timo Meyer's probably staying in New Jersey. Cole Caulfield signed.
hmm
The Brinket's number five. I don't think. What did they need a Vince Dunn? Oh no, he signed, right?
I don't think so. I think he's
No.
a RFA.
Troy Terry, but he had an off season. Keandre Miller, Trevor Zegras is staying. Evan Bouchard is probably staying. Elias Samsonov,
Listen, like, uh,
Gabe Velarde. Yeah, I mean the
I,
other notable names there are like Alexis Lafreniere, Bowen Byram, Morgan Frost, Alex Newhook.
like
Yeah,
I saw people, or I saw it was suggested that one of his preferred destinations would be Detroit.
really? That's so.
Well, I think he's
Oh,
from
he's from Detroit.
Michigan. I
Okay,
think
okay,
he's from Michigan. Let me
that
double
makes
check.
sense.
Yeah, he's from Michigan. So again, but I look at that team and I go, all right, who's going to make an impact right now?
Hmm. Looking at the cap friendly right now. Who is the guy? Yeah, who is the guy?
I don't know.
Yeah, I don't know. Like, I actually am really unsure. I'm even looking through. Like, what would Ottawa want? Like, do they want a? That's actually, yeah, Alex. That's actually really, really tough
I
for
know
you to
it's like
decide.
I'm stuck here too because and I mean, I'm sure Pierre Dorian has better answers than either of us. That's why he's in the position he's in. It's a really tough situation because you have to determine, like, you have to decide, because again, they also don't have their first round pick this year, right?
Yeah.
That's with the Coyotes at 12th overall.
Also, fun fact: they're still paying the Red Wings are still paying Justin Albuquerque until
Oh my god.
2026.
Oh my
A
gosh. Are
one
they really?
point yeah $1.05 million.
That's so much fun. Oh my god.
Yeah, I think Detroit's already on the upswing with who they have, but I don't know, like would you take like a Dominic Kubalik and other draft picks? Like I don't know, like a Dominic Kubalik and a Philip Zadina. And
Listen, I'm not saying
yeah,
I'm not, like, I'm sure they would consider it, but someone who makes an impact.
yeah.
I don't know. Like, that's funny you suggest Winnipeg, but or Dubois. Obviously, that's not going to happen because he wants to go to Montreal, and we should talk about him in a second too. But it's a really tough situation. I think, you know what, it's going to be interesting to see what they do, because I think they said I think they said sale of the team would be done around September, October. If DeBrincat's here, say they don't trade him come training camp and he's on the team, he's going to play out the year, I guess. They got to show the commitment.
Yeah.
Going back to what we said before, that they got to continue to show that commitment, because I think they started last year bringing in Giroux, bringing in DeBrincat, looking at the steps the team made, hopefully bringing in a goaltender. That's what I think. Hopefully he stayed like this. I don't like the Ottawa Senators, but in terms of if how this team's better, this team is better with Alex DeBrincat on it than they are without him.
Yeah.
That's just
Yeah, for sure.
that's just the situation.
It just yeah.
No,
Last
go
thing I want
ahead.
to say is just like betting on that is just gonna be difficult because like which version of Alex DeBrincat are you gonna get? A guy that still was a good player, but just not wasn't the player they thought they were getting, at least for the season. So it'll be interesting to see what happens, because I think if this creeps into the deadline, no way they're getting a good package for him.
No, because he'll be a UFA, and so
Yeah.
they won't get as much as they could have. You mentioned Pierre-Luc Dubois before. Let's bring him up again. I
The
mean, we
biggest
can bring him.
secret, yeah, the
Yeah, we
biggest
can.
secret in the league. Pierre Dubois wants to go to Montreal.
Okay, listen. And he's not the only. There's a couple other Winnipeg Jets players I saw that were being talked about. But let's start with Pierre-Luc Dubois. All right. It's the second summer in a row. Or right? Yeah, second
Yeah.
summer in a row. We'll call it the Pierre-Luc Dubois saga. He wants to go to Montreal. Well, he doesn't want to stay in Winnipeg.
No, he
I'm not
doesn't.
we don't need to comment on that. Whatever. I'm not going to be mean to Winnipeg. He doesn't want to stay in Winnipeg. He was at the draft last year in Montreal. We all thought it was done. The deal was done. Now they're saying he would accept other places. I know they've talked about LA, the Rangers, Minnesota.
A lot of places.
I'm gonna be honest, and listen, he can do whatever the hell he wants. I guess I'm pro player empowerment. I guess I'm not gonna have any sympathy after this goes down. I didn't barely had any sympathy last summer, but then as this drags out again, I'm not gonna have sympathy when he shows up to Montreal. Doesn't have a good few games, and then the Montreal media go after him, because that's what's gonna happen. I don't like. I don't want it to happen. I don't think the Montreal media needs to be so damn aggressive, but they're gonna be, whether we like it or not. So I'm not going to have sympathy when that happens. I don't even have sympathy now.
You know what's funny? I actually read this recently about New York Yankees players of people like apparently it's like, oh, these are the guys that they had the high profile names. They went to New York and then they flamed out. And then so many of the comments were, I'm not saying it, this is a fan perspective, like, but there's so many things people write about is it's an extra responsibility on top of the job you already have to play in a market like that. And I think that's what I see with Pierre-Luc Dubois is going to happen when he goes to Montreal. You imagine if he pulled the stuff he did in Montreal, like to what he did in Columbus. For me at the time, I think you just had that relatively like young guy still trying to make it. But I think we're at a point now that what we have with him is what we have. It's like he's still an amazing player, but I just don't think
Mm-hmm.
like there's that upside we got to wait for. I think we already know what he is as a player, and he's not necessarily like that anchor on offense that maybe Columbus tried to build him up to be. I think
Sure.
that if he goes through certain dry spells, offensively at least, not in his two-way game, I think that's going to be kind of picked up by Montreal media of
Oh
this
yeah.
guy's underperforming. Like, for example, like what happens if this guy has less than 60 points
When he's
this season?
making supposed $9 million
Yeah.
a year and he has under 60 points, man, that guy's gonna get eaten alive. He's
Yeah.
not like I don't even want to make this comparison because I feel bad, but we're going to do it anyways. Listen, Patrice Bergeron is not the. He can get points. He can absolutely get points. He's not many times has he gone more than a point per game. Maybe maybe a few times. He's not Patrice Bergeron.
No.
He's not going to get the benefit of the doubt on this one. I'm sorry, he's not. If he's especially at $9 million,
Yeah.
that's a lot for. Let me pull up his stats real quick. Had how many points this year? Who had 63 points in 73 games. Last year had 60 points in 81 games.
Yeah, it's solid, but it's not. I don't. It just doesn't scream 9 million to me.
Listen, he's going to walk into Montreal and he'll probably be second line center.
Yeah.
Is that fair? I think he'd be a second line center on most of the teams in the league. I think
Yeah.
there's a handful he wouldn't be.
Remember
He'll
when he played the
probably
left side for a while? I remember that. He's playing on the
he
left side for
did.
a while. Yeah.
I don't remember if it worked out well or not, but I don't think he's ever been in. Oh, when he got to Winnipeg, he played on the left because I think he was
Yeah.
coming off an injury. Um, Something like I think he was coming off an injury or COVID. It was the COVID restriction at the time. And then they played him on the left side to start. He's gonna walk in. Listen, he's gonna walk in, probably be second line center. Montreal next year has a 1, 2, 3 of Suzuki, Dubois, and Doc.
Yeah. So
Damn, pretty good.
that's pretty good.
Pretty good. Not bad. Now the question is, what do they give up? Like, let's be honest, LA, New York, Minnesota, they're around. They just try to make the conversation interesting. He's going to Montreal. What do they give up?
I don't know because it's just with Winnipeg, I feel like we say this every year, but I really do believe this was their year to do something because
Mhm.
nobody wants to come back anymore. Like
Yeah.
nobody that core is done. I think that core is over. And if they truly go scorched earth policy, let's rebuild this from the ground up. I think Montreal has a lot of options for that. Lane Hudson really, really
Yeah,
drove
no,
up his stock.
don't even suggest that.
Well, Adam's not here.
Oh, don't even suggest that.
Okay, I don't know. Philip
You should.
Mazar? Like, what do you
Well,
want me to say?
I don't
Yeah.
know. Like, and I don't mean to cut you off
Yeah.
because I don't even know what you were going to suggest next. But the question is, and I guess to add some context to it, if Montreal's the only team he's going to, his value goes down.
Yeah.
Just to the floor, not literally to the floor, but his value goes down because there's no one else he's going to sign an 8-year extent or whatever length extension with outside of the 1 year he has to be there.
Well, it's like Owen Beck, Jordan Harris, and like a second. Or Florida's first. I don't know.
I don't, well, yeah, it'll be 31st, maybe.
Yeah.
Listen, I think a lot of people, I've seen on Twitter some really unrealistic trades. I think Winnipeg fans are absolutely bumping up his value, and some Montreal fans are just taking it down a notch, like just lowering it. And I think, you know what? Maybe that's a fine deal. They're going to have to give up something of value.
Yeah.
Right. They're going to have to give up something of value. And I'm sure we'll talk about it again when Adam's here to see what he has to say, but they're going to have to give up something. Just the way it goes with this deal. Like, I don't think they're giving up Kirby Doc. Like,
No.
I don't think they're giving up Lane Hudson. I don't think they're giving up the 5th overall pick. Like, calm down. We're not there yet. They're not. You're not for Pierre-Luc Dubois in the situation they're in.
Would you do Philip Mazar?
I mean, I don't. Yeah, I don't. You have. I would say, yeah, sure.
Yeah.
How high up? Like, I know he did not have a particularly fantastic year. If you're gonna give up on him now, I guess you give up on him with Pierre-Luc Dubois trade. I don't know. I get it. I'm really curious to see what Adam thinks.
Sorry,
In terms
Adam,
of what
not
they
Lane
have to
Hudson.
give.
Sorry, Adam.
Not,
Sorry,
yeah,
Adam.
no, you should apologize. Yeah, no, you should apologize. You're never going to hear the end of that one. Um, and I guess to wrap Pierre-Luc Dubois' conversation, because I want to get to two more players that were written about earlier today. Um, what does Pierre-Luc Dubois, if he's a Montreal Canadian, how much does he make? Because we just went through Cole Caulfield's extension, and one of the big things there was that the Canadians wanted him to come under Nick Suzuki. And I get it, different situations, a lot more RFA years. Pierre-Luc Dubois is going to be he's going to be 25 in literally a couple weeks. Um very different situation. But how much do you think Pierre-Luc Dubois makes in Montreal
I think if it's over 8 million, in my opinion, then that's
Mm-hmm.
an overpay. I think 8 million is
Okay.
already kind of testing it, but I think in terms of value of what he's already proven of the role he's gonna play, if it's over, yeah, like 7.8 or 8 million on the dot, I think that's way too much.
Okay. That's fair. I would argue $1 million as well is like the most. Listen, I don't know. Maybe I'm completely wrong about Pierre-Luc Dubois. I just can't imagine, can't see if again, it depends on what Pierre-Luc Dubois shows up
Yeah.
next year would be my thing. So there's two more guys they're talking about in an athletic article from Murat Ates, who writes about the Jets, and he was talking about Connor Hellebuck and Blake Wheeler, and I think we already know it's kind of been confirmed that Hellebuck doesn't want to sign an extension. Both these guys have a year left on their contract. let's I mean, do you think let's start with Blake Wheeler. I think this is a much quicker conversation.
Mm-hmm.
Is Blake Wheeler actually a Jet come training camp?
Oh, that's true. I don't know because it depends on where he views himself in his career because he's at the tail end at this point of
Right.
he was the guy that you think of when the Jets were on the up and up. Um, and for him to kind of leave somewhere, I don't know. It's just it. I think it's going to be a situation where he plays out the year. What you see with a lot of veterans gets traded at the deadline, maybe comes back the year after, or he'll retire like those 1 day contract kind of things. I think that's what I'm gonna see Blake Wheeler kind of do because I think
Mm-hmm.
for a run he still could contribute, but I think you're at this point too. Like even if you try to trade him now, you're not getting an insane amount of value for Blake Wheeler.
Oh, I don't think you're getting much value at all. And actually, I have a very different opinion than you on this one. I can't, after what's gone down, I can't fathom them bringing him back, running this back again. So they took the C away from him
Yeah.
for reasons. I don't even so Cap Friendly doesn't even have him listed as an assistant. I feel like that might be wrong. Um, but at the end of after their first round loss to the Golden Knights, Rick Bonus says what he says at the press conference, basically calling out his best players. And all his best player, well, the two culprits and Blake Wheeler being the top one, essentially says we don't like how he handled that. I can't see how Blake Wheeler comes back next year as a Winnipeg Jet because of the entire history of everything. With after Line A leaves, some like it's just all the thing. It just after Line A leaves, I have a sour taste in my mouth. Now we come down to this. I just I don't know how you bring it back. Like we're talking about, like, listen, if you're trading Connor Hellebuck,
Yeah, you're not winning
man,
anything. You're not winning anything. Yeah.
you're blowing this up.
Yeah.
If you're trading Connor Hellebuck, you're blowing this up with as many players as possible. Like it's not just stops. It doesn't just stop at Connor Hellebuck and Blake Wheeler, right? It's a little bit bigger than this. So to me, I think Blake Wheeler is gone regardless. I maybe I'm wrong. Maybe he's still there come training camp, but I cannot see him being with the Winnipeg Jets this coming season. Now with Connor Hellebuck, it sounds like he's going to be traded.
Yeah.
Where does he go?
Ooh, it's a tough one. You know, it's funny. It's like I actually think because they're just so bold right now and they have so
Mhm.
many young guys, like wouldn't it be awesome for him to go to the New Jersey Devils?
It would
Like,
be very interesting, but you don't think they're set with Akira Schmidt and Vitek Vanacek?
I
You're
don't
not
think so. I
convinced?
think I'm not convinced with that tandem.
Okay.
Honestly, I'm gonna say now, like New Jersey hasn't had really consistent goaltending since Brodeur and Corey Schneider. Well,
Right.
when Corey Schneider was not playing like remember he was playing like 70 games a season.
Yes,
I
I do.
really feel that this would be the guy you kind of go for if you're still New Jersey, where I think they're just at a point where they can be so bold with their picks, with the amount of prospects they accumulated, and still just get from their surplus that
Right.
this is not going to hurt them at all. It's still going all in without just the pain of these packages that are going to set them back a few years because it really won't because their core is pretty young.
Mm-hmm.
Um, like just getting back into it, and I think they're also on a momentum swing of getting into the second round, of upsetting the New York Rangers. That this is a team that they look at like what was kind of our weak points, what's something that we want to do in terms of solidifying everything, and I think Connor Hellebuck would be a perfect fit for that team.
But will they be willing to pay the price of the extension? Because
Like,
that's where it
yeah.
gets interesting. Because listen, we're going to talk about Jesper Bratt. Timo Meyer's also up.
Mm-hmm.
Um, I know I'm missing a couple other guys too. Like other guys are gonna come up eventually. Like
Mm-hmm.
you pay because he's gonna ask for a lot of money. And I know the cap's gonna jump up. That was also my next sentence, my next thing too. He's gonna ask for a lot of money. I don't know if he's gonna ask for Sergei Bobrovsky's $10 million. I'm sure he could. And if he
Mm-hmm.
was on the open market, I'm sure he would get it. But are they going to be willing to pay that amount of money to keep Connor Hellebuck?
I'm gonna say yes. I just think
Okay.
yes because um they have so many young guys that are gonna eventually come up, but then eventually too, like you're gonna have to pay these guys as well. But
Right.
I just don't think New Jersey has it in them right now for a goalie that I have full confidence in right now, either on the roster right now or in the system. So
Okay.
for me, I just think that if you're still gonna be bold, if you're gonna do a Timo Meyer trade like that, and just really bet on yourselves, why not do it for a guy in his prime, a guy that is arguably a top three, top five goalie right now,
Mm-hmm.
and make the most out of it? Because these prospects, it's going to be another situation where they keep coming up, and I could be wrong about this, but they're going to keep coming up, but you're going to have to still find ways to put them somewhere. And they're not
Right.
goalies. None of them are goalies.
Yeah.
None of
No,
them
fair.
are goalies. It's mostly defensemen, mostly wingers. So I'm on just that case where just like if New Jersey wants to continue this, fix the weakest spot. What about you?
Fair.
You never
I
mentioned a team for you.
so okay, so I think I'll go quickly. Like it was weird. My gut was like, I don't know, man. Pittsburgh want to contend for quite
Oh
some
my
time.
gosh.
The thing is they don't really have much money to do that either, but they don't have like the capital to necessarily trade, or I don't know if that's something they want to trade. Their cupboards are quite thin at the moment. So I don't know if that something they're willing to trade. Again, I look at like LA, who just traded Cal Peterson. We have no clue about Corpusalo. He's a UFA, and we haven't heard anything about what's next for Jonas Corpusalo. I wonder about LA again. I don't know because what do I know? But that's a very interesting idea, because not that goaltending has been a full on weakness. At times it has been, especially through the regular season. Uh, and if you can have a Connor Hellebuck there, and with a relatively decent backup with someone, I mean, Phoenix Copley, I'm going to just sit here again, talk about Phoenix Copley, but someone who's relatively fine, who's going to hold the ship. I think that's someone that you look at. Let's move on to where should we go next?
We could just mention Jesper Bratt really
Yeah,
quick.
we're
Yeah.
here anyways. Yes, we're Brat. Since we've been talking about the Devils this afternoon or this morning, signed an 8-year deal at $7.875 million.
Solid. I think it was solid.
Solid deal. He had 32 goals and 73 points this last year, which was the same as he had last year. He had 73 points, 26 goals though. Listen, if he keeps up this production, he is still 24 years old. He'll be 25 in a month. But when the cap goes up, I think this is going to be a really, really good deal. And I think that team as a whole is still getting better. I think they got to the second round this year. But if they keep moving in the direction that they're moving in, I think that's going to be a solid deal.
Yeah, they're gonna be fine. I think it's just I love that about New Jersey. It's just that we always talk about Jack Hughes, we always talk
Mm-hmm.
about a Nico Hischier, and to have these other guys too, just kind of just you know coming being on the up and up with them at the same time and signing these guys long term. Definition of if you see that glimmer of hope, you see that upswing, you really capitalize on keeping these guys on the team, wanting to build a winner for the long term. So I loved it. I thought it was great.
Right. Good. And they also the Devils made another trade. We have our third sign and trade in NHL history. So the Devils signed a $50 million extension at for 8 years with Damon Severson, so $6.25 million, and then traded him to the Columbus Blue Jackets. The Columbus Blue Jackets, their top four looks almost completely different than it did this past year.
I think our team too. Yeah, like avoid that whole thing of are we going to go into another big rebuild or are we going to always just be on this downturn again? Jarkko Kekalainen just saying like, no, we're not. We're gonna patch this up. We're gonna try to, get back to how we were 2 seasons ago. And listen, like I like Severson. I think he was great. The extension, I'm still kind of wonky about it. I know he's a right hand shot.
Yeah,
but it is what it is. What it like what you were gonna get for him. I think that good on the guy for getting the extension, but I don't know, just for this much, it's just like, was he even like, he wasn't even the best, like arguably the best defenseman on New Jersey.
No, he was not. But people were saying he was the best UFA defenseman available.
Yeah. So
and Mike Babcock's gonna love that. Again, Mike Babcock move. Like we talked about it last episode, and I think it broke just after we recorded anyways that they were gonna, or it broke the next day with both David and Severson. I said when they traded for Ivan Provorov, this is a Mike Babcock move, not because he said they need to trade for Ivan Provorov, but because when you bring in Mike Babcock, you're not going to half-ass it. Yeah. And I don't think they're half-assing it. Again, we talked about it last episode. If you have any thoughts, go ahead. But whether you like it or not with Mike Babcock, like whether you like the hiring or not, this is Mike Babcock.
Yeah.
Mike Babcock move. Like you're not going to half-ass it with him. To me, I don't necessarily know how much sense it makes, but we'll see.
Yeah, I think been out of the game for a while. It just really didn't work out with, going through the rebuild and then trying to make a winner again.
Right.
Like for his on his part, it didn't work out in Toronto. So I think if you're gonna convince a guy to come back to the NHL after so long, you should have this in place. Like we don't know what it's gonna look like because you're just adding a lot of new faces to this team with Columbus. So we don't know what's gonna look like, but it at least gives that blueprint of we're not a team, we're a team that's trying to win.
Sure. Yeah.
Yeah.
I can't get over it. Well, I don't, again, I said last episode, and I'd argue I still think they're not done. I don't think Columbus is done making moves per se. Like I think
Yeah.
up front they might make a couple more. Maybe they need to get a center. Maybe they should go back and get Pierre-Luc Dubois. I'm,
The thing that's
imagine
funny is like they have the center prospects. It's just like
they're
don't
not
throw
there
them
yet.
in. Yeah, don't throw them
Yeah,
in.
they need an actual center. So we have two coaching hires. We'll talk about the most boring one first. The New York Rangers. They don't go after Sheldon Keefe. They don't go after John Hines. They hire Peter Laviolette to be
Carousel continues.
the the carousel in the Metropolitan Division
Yeah.
continues. It could get super super specific here. Um, I don't know. Is it the worst hire in the world? No. Is it the best hire in the world? No. But it seems to me extremely basic.
Yeah.
It's
Like
meh.
we just okay. You
Yeah.
added the guy there. Yeah.
I don't know if this drastically changes how they maybe it changes how they play. I don't think it changes much about the New York Rangers. I don't think this is I don't think this puts them um above in my opinion at least. Um then the Calgary Flames get their guy. It was down to a few coaches and they end up hiring their assistant coach, Ryan Huska. And actually, I don't know if you saw the notification, Daniel, but most recently this afternoon, they brought back Jerome Aginla as special advisor to the general manager, who had been
That's a good
rumored
move.
rumored to come back. So again, Ryan Huska is a guy who's been around the organization for some time. Now, my question is, do they go back to their Daryl Sutter? You talk about going back to the old ways. Do they go back to the Daryl Sutter ways? Or do they take a different approach where we saw Jonathan Huberdeau, or sorry, where we saw Matthew Tkachuk and those guys, really shine offensively?
You better go in a different direction the way last season went. I know
Yeah.
Ryan Huska is still a Daryl Sutter guy, but I think that if you could really balance out what made them successful 2 seasons ago and still try to have an approach of like, listen, we have a different core now that these guys are playing a different style of, let's try to make the most of their strengths, then that'd be great. I've seen it in other teams before where they hire the assistant and they have the understanding of what worked in the old system, but didn't heavily rely on like, let's just try to run it back. Let's try to find a balance there of what we can really do.
Yeah, I think the one of the things that they talk about with assistant coaches is there's the way they talk to the player. So that's and the way they interact with them. So again, that's also another
Yeah. Oh,
conversation.
one example. I think of one example that's like Mike
Yeah.
Sullivan after
Mhm.
Dan Bilesma
Right.
was fired. Like Pittsburgh wasn't necessarily on a rebuild, but it, they had to do something in terms of a move of familiarity given the situation of the way the Flames are built. Like there's a team that's expected to try to win it now with the
Yeah.
roster they have. So I
Yeah.
think
Yeah.
that's an example too of Mike Sullivan coming in for Dan Bilesma as an example of you're making the changes without forcing these guys to play a different way that they're not used to.
Yeah, for sure. I agree. Okay, let's wrap up the show with two things. There's two things
Okay.
left. The Leafs and the Habs. We'll start with the Leafs because I want to say save the Habs for the end because I think it might be an interesting discussion. they hire Shane Doan, blah 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 blah. Cool. I don't the Shane Doan thing has been such a weird ever since Dubas left. So I've noticed an interesting thing on Twitter. Um, when Lou left, there was this divide on Leafs Twitter, and it was Lou side and it was um Dubas side. And it was both sides were talking about each other.
Yeah.
And we've come to that again, where it's just, can we just stop talking about Dubas? It's over. It's
Yeah, let it
done.
go. Let it go.
Finished. Done. Enough. I don't want to hear about him anymore.
This reminds me of the end of Ferris Bueller's Day Off.
Yeah, I think so.
Yeah, the part where he comes back out of the washroom in his bathrobe. He's like, "Oh, you're still here? The movie's done. Go home."
Like, come on, enough. Like, I don't care. We're talking about, like, I saw him today. He got a honorary doctor from Brock University. I saw it on. I did not that I didn't want to see that. Cool, super cool, great. I don't know what else to
Get
say.
that degree from University of Pennsylvania. I'm kidding.
But you don't need to tell me. You don't need to, like, then Jason Spezza leaves, and then it's like, we're gonna redo this with Jason Spezza. Finished. Enough, please. Now Shane Doan comes in, and it's all the like anti-Dubas guys are like, oh, look at the way Shane Doan plays. Who cares? I mean that, like, in the nicest way possible to Shane Doan. It's not a Shane Doan thing. It's Brendan Shanahan's the president of this team. No one on this team plays like Brendan Shanahan, right?
No one, yeah. I mean,
so
yeah,
what
nobody.
does it mean? It means it's cool. I'm more interested. Like, is he gonna be helpful? He's not gonna impact the way they play on the ice. I promise. Because when Jason Spezza played for the Leafs, everyone was like, man, that's the only guy who gives a damn. He went up to the press box, still looked like he gave a damn, and nothing changed on the ice. So tell me, Shane Doan's gonna what? Listen, he's just a hire. Cool. I want to have a conversation about, are the Leafs actually going to get rid of Sheldon Keefe or keep him? Because
yeah, that's still a thing.
I have a real issue, and this is the most upset I might be all episode. I have a real problem with running this all back again, with the only change being made being Brad Treliving. And I also have a problem with, if Sheldon Keefe goes into the season with an extension and come December, you decide you don't want to keep him anymore, why didn't you just fire him in April or May? Sorry. We actually got to May. It's exciting.
We're still on Sheldon watch.
Why didn't you fire him in May? What changed? Nothing changed. But what changed between May and, let's call it, December? You did this with Mike Babcock. It was obvious. You should have done it in April after he screwed up against the Bruins when he got outcoached. So what's the difference?
Yeah, I just don't know. The player relationships. Like the only thing I can think of is, this is a guy that's known the players, especially the core guys coming up, and you'd still want to just see, like, how's that going to affect the locker room in some way. I think if they want to do a shock to the system, you should have done it already. But I don't know. Like, I actually put myself in Sheldon Keefe's situation. Like every day, it's like, I have a job, right? This is still gonna work. I'm gonna be here at the draft. I'm gonna be here training camp. Like, what's the let me know now?
Listen, he has a year left, and I know the whole. People have been saying, well, generally they don't go into the last year of their contract. I don't care. So you're gonna, now money is not an issue. You're gonna extend him, and then come December when you don't like him, you're gonna drop him after extending him. Now money's an issue. Okay. The player, I'm of the belief that the players really should not have a say whether he is fired or not. I don't think you take that into consideration. They already got Mike Babcock fired. Whether if he's fired, whether he stays, if Sheldon Keefe gets fired, they will have gotten him fired. He is I'm not interested in like I'll call it coddling these players anymore. Like, let's be real. They have one playoff round win in 7 years now.
Yeah.
That's not good enough. It's not. It's not good enough. And the whole thing was, and we talked about, I don't remember if you were on the episode or not, was you can't run it back the same way again.
No, you cannot.
And now you're going to run it back with all the core four trying to rebuild the bottom six for a seventh year now. You're going to run back the coach and you're going to run back the president, but we're just going to change the GM. Who's the general manager? Is that a fair question to ask?
Yeah. I think is at this point, I don't know. Again, I'm going to bring it up that we'll see what the draft brings, what's going to happen there. We'll see if there's a move there. And then if not, when free agency starts, maybe that's when things start ramping up. I'm not sure, but I do agree that if there's going to be drastic change, it has to be now of, listen, like this wasn't working. You need a new voice in the locker room. And if you really want to push these guys, Brad Trivling did this already. Like, you know what I mean? He already did this. I don't know, out of necessity, but it was also a response to what did the Flames do against the Oilers in the second round? He still went out and made the move. So for me, it's similar in a way. Like there is a bit of this urgency to try and find like something different.
I agree. And we continue to sit here and it's like Elliot Friedman says on 32 Thoughts, I thought it was going to be decided by now. And it doesn't sound like it's decided. Just pick a direction, decide. Like, I don't know. It's frustrating because obviously, yes, take the time to consider and all that. But it's frustrating that like we're at this point again.
Yeah.
I'm frustrated. That's the way I'm going to put it. I'm frustrated. Let's go to the Habs real quick before we end the episode. I realize we've been going for quite some time. But,
yeah, we have been. Passionate conversations.
Yeah, I'm just upset. I'm frustrated and I'm upset. But this is an interesting conversation, I think. So the Habs, the Canadians have the 5th overall pick this year. Mm-hmm. There's a lot swirling out there. We don't need to get into all of it. Some of, they're going to take Smith. They're going to take Leonard. They're going to take Dvorsky. They're going to take Reinbacher. They're going to trade for the 4th overall pick. They're going to trade for the 2nd overall pick. And the last one, I think, is the most obvious one to me. And I think the Montreal Canadiens should take Michkov, Matei Michkov at number 5.
If he's still there.
Yes, sorry. Let's preface it with if he's still there.
Yeah.
I will, I had this really interesting text, and I'm going to see if I can find it. Because Adam texted saying, I think I've accepted the fact that we aren't going to draft Michkov. And it hurts, but I've accepted it. I don't think there's an actual 100% valid reason as why, if available, which it looks like he's going to be available at 5, at what reason you don't take Michkov. First off, the team has a load of prospects that we've read about, we've talked about, etc. And if in this iteration of the Montreal Canadiens under Jeff Gordon and Kent Hughes can develop them right, that's going to be super helpful in filling up the rest of the team until Michkov gets here. Now, even without Michkov next year, because Michkov has a 3-year contract in the KHL, the team's going to take a step forward. Maybe they're not going to make the playoffs. They're definitely not going to be a top bottom 5 team. And I think if you add Pierre-Luc Dubois, they're not a bottom 10 team for sure. If I think he's going to come here. He wants to play in the NHL. I believe I've read that.
Mm-hmm.
He said he wants to play in the NHL. So I'm going to say when. When Michkov comes in 3 years, you are now adding a talent who probably when he comes to the NHL could be at the level of Kaprizov or better when he came to the NHL and entering a competitive window. Imagine being able to play Michkov for a year or two at $925,000 plus performance bonuses in your top 6.
You know what it reminds me of?
Who?
Artemi Panarin.
Right.
Yeah.
I just I know everyone's worried about the Russia situation. I say again, when has Russia not been a problem? Prior to the war, has Russia
Yeah.
not always been a consideration? Like pre this year,
Yeah.
pre this year, Michkov has been number 2.
Yeah.
It was Bedard and Michkov for the last few years. So I could understand some teams want them to come and want their guy to come now. Fantilli, Carlson, Bedard, obviously. Like I don't include Bedard because he's obviously going at 1, but Fantilli and Carlson might come sooner, and that might benefit the Anaheim Ducks and the San Jose Sharks, or who's
Columbus.
3? Columbus, the Columbus Blue Jackets. It might benefit them that they come a little bit sooner. But in the situation the Canadians are in, I can't see a really good reason as to why you don't pick Michkov at 5 with the prospects you have, with the guys you already have on your roster, to be a competitive team in 3 years and to add Matej Michkov. I think that's the most obvious one. He's going to be the best player available, if available at 5. He's the best player available at 5. It's not revisionist history. Really, it's not revisionist history. We've been talking about the kid for 2 or 3 years.
Yeah.
The same way we've been talking about Bedard. What's changed?
I remember, we talked about the Ivan Halinka Gretzky tournaments of these guys going head to head with each other. And it's always been that. It's always been the comparison between those two players. For me, just the one thing I just want to say is I really do agree with you that I think that in terms of the talent level, you pick the guy if he's available. And the other part of it is I'm looking through what you said. It was really interesting, Alex, what you said about the situations these guys find themselves in. Like, we're not going to talk about Connor McDavid because we already know he's going to Chicago.
Sure.
The Ducks and the Blue Jackets, I think that they are in different situations in terms of the young guys they do have or what they've done. I think with the Ducks, it's a difference of wanting to have a guy that's going to mesh in with these young guys you're already rolling out. With Columbus, it's a guy that you probably want to get someone who's NHL ready, an NHL ready center like Leo Carlson, who is going to benefit with maybe not getting all the responsibilities because you have a Cole Sillinger and a Kent Johnson.
Sure. Yeah.
And then even when I talk about the Sharks, they're not good. They are not good, but they're a team that you still have to do something and put at least one guy there that maybe will help you be competitive a lot sooner. Right. And I looked, back to 5. I could put Montreal and Arizona in the same situations in terms of not saying they're the same teams, but they're owed a bit more patience in what they're trying to do for the teams. So for me, Michkov goes to one of those teams, and I think it is going to Montreal because he's gonna. If he drops to 5, you pick that guy.
Pick him.
Yeah. So I just like to point that out. I did like what you said there that that's the right situation for the player. That if you're gonna think about the Russian factor, if you're gonna think about if he's gonna continue to be pro with the KHL, then you profess the patience there. And I just don't see it with the teams picking 2 to 4.
Okay, so it's not breaking news, but Renaud Lavoie had tweeted it. I'm pretty sure I saw this a month ago or so now too. Renaud Lavoie tweeted an hour ago. Matvey Michkov plans to be at the NHL draft in Nashville, according to multiple sources. It will be interesting to see if this will help his rank selection. Please, if he's available at 5, listen, I don't take him. I don't care. I don't care. You know what? I hope they don't take him. But there's no reason to me why you select someone else when you know this guy's available, and we've been talking about him for years in comparison to Connor Bedard. Someone's gonna have to explain to me what has changed.
Yeah.
Put it like that. I'm just double checking Twitter. I don't see anything.
Looking at it right now. Not really too much. It is a 4 o'clock on a Thursday.
Yeah, there'll probably be something tomorrow at 5:30 as per usual, a Friday news dump. But
Cat Friendly just put the breakdown of the Jesper Bratt contract. That's about it.
all right. All right. So let's wrap up the episode. Thank you for listening to another episode. If you are not already doing so, subscribe to the podcast or follow it depending on where you are, and make sure to check us out on Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, YouTube, TikTok, and make sure to follow us there too so you can see any content that we post. And we'll be back soon.
Thanks, guys. Bye.